The premise of Uzaki-chan wants to hang out is something I can actually really relate to, and I suspect many of you can too. You see, people like us are totally content sitting at home and watching anime all day, but someone in your life, maybe friends, roommates, family, etc., they all want you to go out and engage in social activities for your own good, because that's what would make them happy, so it's gotta make you happy too. Since we're really close to the American holiday of Thanksgiving right now, and we're dealing with a story about college students, I'll share a story from back in my college days. You see, I never wanted to go home for Thanksgiving break back when I was in college. The whole break was 5 days long, and I would have spent 2 of those days just traveling. Also, I was going to see my family again in less than a month anyway for Christmas, so I figured I may as well spend these 5 days just relaxing, maybe doing a little bit of studying, and of course, watching anime. Now, one of my friends from my dorm could not bear the thought of me spending Thanksgiving alone, so he insisted that I go to his place, which was much closer than my home. I declined, but he kept pestering me, and then finally I gave in and had dinner at his place, watched some football. Overall, it was a good time. But I learned my lesson, and the next year I just said that I was going home. However, I stayed on campus anyway while no one was around. I watched Azumanga Daioh, I read the Berserk manga, I watched some football, I cooked fajitas. It was the best Thanksgiving of my life. But just like my college roommate, there are many people in this world who just can't accept that some people enjoy spending time alone. Like, for example, the titular character, Uzaki-chan, who keeps pestering her senpai into hanging out with her because she just doesn't like seeing him being a loner. This show is, at its essence, a comedy, and some of you might also be tempted to call it a slice-of-life anime, although you'd be completely wrong, and I've talked about this many times in the past. I'm not going to go into detail now, but yeah, this is your typical comedy about nothing. The majority of the show consists of Uzaki-chan telling observational-type jokes and poking fun at her senpai. To a lesser extent, unfortunately, the show also involves a good bit of sexual humor, such as unintentional double entendres being overheard by other characters, and also Uzaki-chan's tits ending up where you might not expect them. I generally like the sexual humor, but the non-sexual humor was nothing special. They were the kind of jokes you could find in basically any show in this genre. Now, when I do like shows in this genre, they tend to have a large cast of characters, but that's not the case here. You have the 2 main characters, then you have 3 side characters who basically play the exact same role in trying to hook these 2 main characters up, and then you have Uzaki-chan's mother, who was introduced pretty late, but she ends up having a really funny dynamic with the male lead, and if you threw in more side characters like that, I'm sure I would have enjoyed the show a lot more. In sum, I like the sexual elements of the show, but everything else was kind of boring. And for those of you who disagree with me, tell me honestly, if you made Uzaki-chan flat, would you still care about her jokes? In my humble opinion, pretending to care about women's personalities just because they're hot is something you should save for the real world. And now let's talk really briefly about what was apparently a controversy back in the US. And thankfully now that I live in Japan, I don't have to deal with this shit if I don't want to, but back there, everyone was complaining online about how you can't have such a young looking girl with such big titties. Let's look at this objectively. Uzaki-chan is 19 to 20 years old in this show. She's a college student, and guess what? Like many Japanese people, she's allowed to be short and she's allowed to have a young-looking face. The only change is the big titties, and guess what? Women are allowed to have big titties too. I'm not exactly sure what the controversy is here, and probably neither are the people complaining. And by people, I mean women. Because no man would ever complain about this unless they're white knighting for a woman. This is what Dick Masterson would call NSFW, not safe for women. Ultimately, they're just jealous of the titties, and they're going to use any excuse they can to complain about it. Alright, a few final notes here. The music's good, the animation's good, and the voice acting are good. These are all secondary points, but at least you can say the show was well made. Also, I think it's important to point out that, as this show demonstrates, all former high school swimmers have amazing bodies long after graduating. I can't stress that enough. And finally, I'm really happy with my new gimbal camera stabilizer. It looks like it's working great in this video, not a lot of shaking, and so I'm planning to use this a lot more in the future when I travel around Japan. Alright, that's all for now. See you next time.